everybody. You know, there are millions, hundreds of millions of children around the world who are orphaned or abandoned. They have no families and no real place to call home. Well, Sweet Sleep is a nonprofit organization founded to help these children and to end what has become a global crisis. Joining me from Sweet Sleep is Madelene Metcalf. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I'd love hearing about this program a little bit and learning more about it. You've been around for 12 years, and very much like Oasis Center, you started out basically helping provide clean, safe places for young abandoned orphan children to sleep. And I think over the years your organization has evolved as well, but ultimately, what is the mission of Sweet Sleep?
Well, Sweet Sleep exists simply to share God's love and hope in Christ to the world's orphaned and abandoned children.
Yes.
We began by providing beds, just meeting a very tangible basic need to these children. But then over the years, we've just seen better, more inclusive ways to care for these children.
So basically, we have children in third world countries and even in America who go to bed at night with no beds. How were you able to provide these beds? How were you able to find these children?
Well, we work in the countries through in-country partners who know the heartbeat of these communities, who know where the children are living. And then we source all of the beds in that country. We use local vendors, we use local staff people to provide these beds to stimulate those economies and to care for the children and follow up with those children in the most appropriate way.
Okay. So what exactly, Madelene, is the orphan crisis, and what is the primary cause? Why are we seeing so many abandoned and orphaned children?
Well, it's really interesting, and it's good for people to understand really what the crisis is. Death is not the only thing that takes parents away from children. Every day, 5,760 children become orphans around the world. This happens predominantly due to poverty. It happens from emigration when parents leave to go find gainful employment. In fact, worldwide, 80 to 90% of the children who we call orphans actually have parents who could care for them if given the means to do so.
And I know that is one of your goals. You want to help preserve these families. You want to help these families keep their children, keep them healthy, and keep them safe. Talk about how you're helping to try to preserve these families.
Right. Well, you know, the best way to care for a child and to keep them out of all of the atrocities that these children fall victim to is in the protection of a family. So we have focused all of our work on keeping children in families, preventing abandonment, reintegrating children into their families, or encouraging indigenous adoption, and that is adoption by people in those countries of those children. We understand that there is a reason that the families couldn't care for the child in the first place, so we're going in at the root of that problem and addressing that need so that the parent has sustainable employment, or so that the parent is trained and educated in caring for an adoptive child in those communities.
Now, are we talking all ages here? Are we talking from infant all the way to teens?
We absolutely are. And in fact, in Eastern Europe is the best example. The government is closing the orphanages in order to join the European Union. But this is a great opportunity for advancement for this country. So a lot of the children who are being adopted into Christian families are in their teens. And so our job is to train those families in what to expect when you take a child into your home who's been neglected in an institution for 12, 13 years.
Yeah. Are you working in any way to pair our American families up with many of these children who may be in other countries?
You know, we are not. We do take mission teams to work with the families. We take social workers and early intervention specialists to train the families. But our goal is to connect these children with families in their communities, strengthen those families, and ultimately strengthen the communities that these children are being placed into families.
Wow, that's good. What would be Sweet Sleep's biggest needs? Because you all have a huge mission with the millions of children around the world in need of families, in needs of places to sleep. What if someone watching this wanted to figure out a way that they could help, maybe volunteer, maybe donate? What would be your biggest need as an organization?
Well, we have wonderful resources on our website that people can access. There are different ways to get involved. Sweet Sleep has been a great entry point for churches, for children's ministries, because when you start with the bed, it's a very tangible need that can be met. It's a great way to teach missional living to our children. Moving beyond that to the family preservation, there's a great need for people who are skilled and educated in social work, in occupational therapy, in these different ways that we can train the families in these countries. We, of course, always need donations because we source all of our resources in country, which means we are stimulating their economy. We don't collect beds or bedding items here and take them with us. We get everything in country, so the financial support is critical.
Absolutely. Do you have any story or anything that you would love to share with us, Madelene, that you would consider a huge success story, something that you're very, very proud of?
Yes, absolutely. One of our very first beneficiaries of this program in Ethiopia was a grandmother. She took in her 6 grandchildren when her daughter and her daughter's husband both died of HIV/AIDS within 6 months of each other. So she took in these 6 grandchildren. She was barely able to care for herself, much less feed these children. So our social workers in Ethiopia asked her, what skill do you have? What can you do? And she said, well, I can make spongy bread. So our program taught her how to start a business and gave her some startup capital. So she started making spongy bread for the local restaurants. She was so successful that within a year she was able to hire 10 widows under her who are also making spongy bread, who are also able to care for children in their families.
I'm sure that is what you'd like to see more of, just to be able to provide some sort of a trade or some sort of a skill for these folks that could help keep their families together.
Absolutely, and that's our approach in Ethiopia, for example. We have vocational training centers. We have social workers that work with these families. If they don't already have a skill, we have the vocational training centers. Once they're ready, we give them startup capital, and then our social workers continue to follow up with them for a year. When they're turning a profit, we teach them about savings and loan programs so that there's a ripple effect. And once you stabilize a family and a child is kept in that family, that family then stimulates the rest of the community. And in places where we've had our programs intact for a while, we have seen permanent houses being built, and we've seen water lines being laid. Because once you save a child by stabilizing a family, you'll save the community. And with enough of that, you can really, really change a nation.
Absolutely. I know this is it's a faith-based organization. If there's members of a church, or if there's a church out there watching that maybe somehow wanted to have a mission trip or help in any way, is there a way that they can get a program started in their particular church?
Oh, absolutely. This is our greatest asset. It's something that churches have been so successful with. It can start, we can address any age group within the church. We have programs that are cute and catchy and educational for the children's ministries. Many VBS programs use Sweet Sleep as their mission focus, and we've heard that it's been the most successful VBS program that they've ever had. You know, once children raise money to provide beds, we've had teams come from that church to hand deliver those beds. We also have devotional materials that families can do together. Once you teach your children about caring for the orphan, they will want to get involved, and you can truly change your family and your church community to a missional living.
Wow. Well, I know with your bed program, it's really nice for these children to have the beds, but there's also a program that's your mosquito net program that helps them to sleep even better.
Absolutely.
And how does that work?
So that is in Uganda, where we work with the HIV positive community. These are children who are living in child-headed households. We focus on the HIV positive children, or those who have been abandoned or orphaned because their parents were positive. These children are so susceptible to secondary infection like malaria or pneumonia, so the beds literally saved their lives. We've even met a little girl who had festering sores that she was sleeping on the ground and insects were eating away at her, or intestinal parasites. So the bed gets them out of these elements and gives them a better chance of survival with the virus.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about those beds. Are we talking about are they provided sheets? Are they provided blankets? in Ethiopia, and I know in some of the hotter countries, they may not need those things, but just a single bed, they've got it. Is there anything more that goes along with that?
Absolutely. Of course, where malaria is prominent, we provide the mosquito net.
Okay.
The bed comes with a mattress, blankets, sheets.
Okay.
But the most unique thing that we provide is also the Bible. With each child gets a Bible. One beautiful thing, when I was talking to a partner in our HIV community programs, and I asked, what is the most impactful part of the bed that the child received? And I was thinking something about the comfort or the warmth or the protection of the mosquito net. And he actually said, the best part is the Bible. Because before, the only escape that they knew from this disease was death. Now they know they have life in Christ.
Wow, they know they have hope.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on to tell us about this wonderful organization. You got a website if people want to know how to help or volunteer?
We do. It is simply sweetsleep.org.
Okay.
There are all sorts of ways to plug in all sorts of information and downloadable resources to share with your family and your church communities.
Great. Thank you so much, Madelene, for being here. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. I also want to thank my earlier guests, Mark Dunkerley and Ron Johnson from Oasis Center for being here in the Real program, of course. And thank you for watching. I'm Tuwanda Coleman. I'll see you next time on the Plus Side of Nashville.